talked about a couple of times here on the channel that loadout drops are incredibly important within Warzone, perhaps the most valuable thing that you can pull your money together with as a squad or buy solo. But while we've discussed the importance of this, and we've even talked about some of the best loadouts, 5 in particular, that I really enjoy in the past, maybe instead you want to kit out a weapon that you feel a little bit more comfortable with, but you still want it to perform as best as it possibly can. So today, I want to talk to you about the very best attachments you absolutely should be using, honestly, on just about every weapon given the opportunity to do so. Today, as we go along, let me know your thoughts. What do you think is the most valuable attachment in Warzone? And as well, make sure you hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already to stay up to date with all things Modern Warfare and all things Warzone on a daily basis. I've been having an absolute blast with the mode, having a blast creating content, and hopefully you guys have been enjoying it as well. But anyways, let's jump into it. Firstly, I don't really want to say that there's any definitive countdown or a single best of the best attachments we'll talk about here, because honestly, they're all situational and help in various different scenarios that don't necessarily overlap. Each of them have their own individual strengths, but when you put them all together, that's when they can absolutely help you greatly and whatever loadout you're running. First thing though, I will say this is probably one of the most important to me personally, that being the Monolithic suppressor. Staying off the radar is absolutely crucial in Warzone. The minimap in Warzone, when firing, you show up as a red dot on the minimap. That is, if your weapon isn't suppressed. I can't tell you how many times I've been third or fourth party because the gunfight's not necessarily even my own teams, but others we may be engaging, their gunfire shows up on that radar. And also, I can't tell you how many times that I've ended up picking off teams because I know their location because of said gunfire. So naturally, in a mode that at best sees you organically get 2 tries to stay alive as long as possible, pending no buybacks from your squad, you want to minimize the chance of any player being able to gang up on you like that because of knowing your location. So the simple answer is use a suppressor, right? That seems simple enough, but not just any suppressor. I've seen so many guns that I'll walk over in Warzone where players have the standard suppressors equipped, but this is essentially cutting their potential with the attachment at the knees. Using the Monolithic suppressor in particular allows players to stay off that radar, plus also increases that damage range profile for all weapons that it's attached to, meaning that your max damage and middle range damage and so on, that will go on a little bit further than that of just the normal damage properties that it has for the base range values. So you get a little bit more on top of just having that, and in a mode where you're playing on a map as big as Warzone's, a lot of the times you're not going to have close quarters engagements where you're right on top of a player. So a Monolithic suppressor adding a little bit more range to that so you can get kills at a distance is absolutely fantastic. Another attachment that is absolutely awesome, I think, is that of any thermal optic. Now personally, I don't really like these primarily on rifles, but I do see players using them on rifles, and there's nothing wrong with that. I usually just like to use the thermal to scout out on a sniper rifle, to which you can use either the standard or the variable zoom, but if you do want to play around with the thermal hybrid, that's a good choice for rifles and long guns, where you can then swap to a standard red dot or jump back to being able to scout with thermal. But like we've talked about here on the channel before, thermal is incredibly OP as it stands right now, because unless a player has cold-blooded, they'll be visible at basically any distance from across the map if you have the right magnification on a thermal optic. Their heat signature will show up from across the map. They might be very small and you might have a tough time seeing them, but they'll show up there so long as they don't have cold-blooded. So running a thermal optic allows you to get as much information as possible out of the entire world that you're scouting. Then one other big one that I run on absolutely every class that I have the opportunity to do so is that of some extended mags. Now, this will vary depending on what weapon you have. Some, like your M4, like your AUG 5.56 rounds, you have a 60 round drum or stick mag, but sometimes when it comes down to it, snipers, you can have a 7 round mag, or the EBR, you can have a 15 to 20 round mag if I'm not mistaken. So it will vary, but giving yourself that extra ammunition is not only great because you then stockpile a little bit more and can take on more than one engagement before having to reload, and also given the fact that when players go down, it's smart to finish them off just in case they have a teammate up, or if they have self-revive, which is the case that I've seen plenty of times as well. So finishing off those players will take a couple extra shots, so to be able to take a player down, finish them off, but then still be in a gunfight right after, having those extra shots is absolutely crucial. Next, talking specific attachments, stippled grip tape is, in my mind, the most important thing that I run on every weapon in MP or Warzone. Warzone, though, is obviously something I want my gun up as fast as possible, and with making some adjustments that will slightly alter the ADS speed, I want to make sure that I have any modifier to get it up a little bit faster, but stippled grip tape will allow you to get that weapon to aim ever so slightly as opposed to a bare weapon without any sort of grip on it. It is absolutely imperative imperative that you have your gun up and you get to start shooting as quick as possible, because the TTK in Warzone can be unforgiving at times, and of course whoever's accurate with those first shots and gets those first shots off oftentimes is the victor in a gunfight. So to be able to give yourself a better chance of being able to have an accurate shot, absolutely necessary. Then we'll talk about some stuff that I think helps with the barrels, but this is something that depends on the weapon. Not every single weapon has the same exact barrel, so I can't say like a stippled grip tape, like a thermal optic, like a monolithic suppressor, one in particular, but this is where it'll come down to whatever weapon you're using and the barrels that they have on offer. What you want to look for is things that increase damage range as well as bullet velocity. Recoil control is a nice little bonus, but it's not necessarily one that you need to have on it. Recoil bonus is mainly that barrel is a little heavier, so it won't naturally kick up as much, but the damage range and bullet velocity is something that helps out with those gunfights at a mid to long range engagement. Obviously the range carries the higher damage properties a little further than their base attributes, and then the bullet velocity allows those shots to get there a little bit quicker. For example, on my loadouts I end up running on the M4A1 either the M16 Grenadier or the Corvus Custom Marksman. On the HDR I run the 26.9 HDR Pro barrel, the EBR the Forged Tac Precision 22-inch barrel, the AUG the 407mm extended barrel, the Ram 7 the Forged Tac Eclipse barrel, and the Bison the 8.7 steel or polygonal barrels. Now again, like we said, it is something that depends on the weapon, so there is no specific one that is universal for every single weapon, but make sure you're looking for those things that will increase the damage range and bullet velocity, and if you can, the recoil control as well. Next, we'll talk about some recoil reducing grips. To me, the ones you should absolutely run are the Commando foregrip, Ranger foregrip, and Merc foregrip attachments. Again, this one though, kind of coming down to your own personal preference. Some offer some slightly different benefits than the other, but the main overlapping point though is that they do help mitigate the recoil. And while it might not be something close quarters, recoil is all that much of an issue. If you're going for somebody at a distance, at range, you'll definitely notice that unless you tap fire or burst fire your weapon, you're not going to be able to hold that steady for an entire magazine to get that kill. So while that's the extreme example of it, it is something that the recoil in a larger map and larger gunfights and longer range engagements is absolutely crucial to end up controlling. So to be able to use these weapon attachments to your advantage is absolutely something you need to do. Next, let's talk about some stock options. Now, personally, I'm one that really favors mobility. I feel like the attachments that I run elsewhere can help stabilize my weapon in gunfights, so I don't necessarily need to go for things like aiming stability perks. But what I like to do is go for those quicker ADS modifiers as well as some mobility if it is at all possible. So the things that I always go towards is that of a no stock option or a skeleton stock option or something of the like. Sometimes it's not branded as a skeleton stock, but it will be something that has these same benefits, but you want to make sure that you're looking for mobility as well as aim down sight speeds. So for example, I end up running on my M4 the no stock option that allows me to have some better movement speed as well as ADS speed for simply sacrificing some aiming stability and recoil control, which I like to think that I make up with in the rest of my loadout for that weapon. Whereas I could just use the Forged Tac CQS for only ADS, but I like to have that extra mobility. But then there's situations like my Bison class setup where I'll use the Corvus skeleton stock over the no stock because I'll gain aiming movement speed as well as ADS speed. And this is something that close quarters I like to have the ability to strafe while rounding corners so that I can have my gun fight up if I need to take an engagement right there instead of running around and putting myself at a disadvantage. But then there's situations like the long gun of the EBR in which I can use the FSS Raider Chassis Elite stock option, which gives me added ADS speed, aiming walking speed, and sprint to fire speed. So kind of like a skeleton stock here, but with a little bit extra added bonus with a sprint to fire speed. So like we said, that one really comes down to the specific weapon you're using it on, but make sure you're looking for those things that aid mobility as well as ADS potential. The final two attachments we'll talk about come down to perks, and these ones can be kind of self-explanatory. Firstly, Sleight of Hand. Sleight of Hand obviously lets you reload faster, and while in a lot of situations it may not be something that is incredibly crucial to get a reload off as fast as possible because maybe you're taking shots at a distance, maybe that's something you have some time to reload before the enemy ends up targeting you and sending some return fire. But there are definitely those situations where you'll be close and pinned down in gunfire, and having the opportunity to get some more shots off fast is absolutely beneficial. Sleight of Hand is kind of my default weapon perk if I need to run one, and so therefore definitely give it a try if you don't in Warzone. Then the final thing we'll talk about is fully loaded, which is one that honestly outside of Warzone, I wouldn't really consider all that much, but this is incredibly advantageous. If somebody buys me back or I come back from the gulag and there's a loadout drop that I can land on, I absolutely love having my own weapons and stuff, but oftentimes I'll only have one magazine of both rifle or sniper or whatever classification of weapon I'm using and that ammo type. But jumping in and having fully loaded equipped on that will give you all your ammunition you need for that specific weapon, which is, again, late game if you have no ability to loot something up or you're just jumping into a fight as a last-ditch effort from the gulag or being bought back, it will help you out incredibly. But overall, that is the best attachments here that I think are available in Warzone as it stands right now and are the most advantageous. So let me know your thoughts down there in the comment section down below. What do you guys think here of these? Are you guys going to try these out? Do you already use some of them? Is there anything that I missed? Whatever it is, feel free to let me know your thoughts. But hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to drop a like down below. And of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure you guys subscribe so you don't miss a single thing regarding all things Modern Warfare and Warzone. Updates, news, information, tips, tricks, all that good stuff. We got you covered here on the channel. So if any of that interests you, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single thing. If you guys also follow me over on Twitter and Instagram, those are the best places to get connected outside of YouTube. Probably live on both those. If you guys want to strike up a conversation, ask me a question, whatever it may be, that link is down there in the description below. But said, thanks so much for watching. My name is Espresso. I'll see you guys later. Take care and peace.